Hello everyone. Today I want to show a game played between Veselin Topalov and Levin Aronian. This was played in the Kodus Vaikaze tournament in 2006. Um, let's start from the beginning, in fact. It starts with d4 and knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, and b6. We have the Queen's Indian defense on the board. We will see quite a bit of theoretical preparation in this game. Continues with g3, bishop a6, b3 defending the c4 pawn, and bishop b4 check. While this will waste a move, but it will also ensure that white's bishop placement is not optimal. So we have bishop d2, and the bishop tucks back to e7. Bishop g2 and c6, preparing for d5. Bishop to c3 and d5. Knight goes to e5. Knight ft7, interestingly, not developing the other knight. We have a swap of knights, and now the other knight is developed after knight into d7 and knight into d7. White develops with knight d2 and black castles and white castles. Knight f6 is played, just developing, and e4. White strikes in the center. b5, a counter challenge to the c4 pawn. This is all known theory, and this position was supposed to give quite equality to black. And rook e1 used to be a popular move here, but then black learned to equalize. Then e into d5. In one game between Anand and Adams, it was played that after c into d5 was played, white played c5, and after a b4, which threatens the rook as well as rook on f1 as well as the bishop on c3. Anand sacrificed the rook and he won a very nice game. In this game, after e into d5, we have e into d5, and now rook e1. Rook to b8, preparing a b4 thrust. c5, just closing the central tension and gaining a little bit of space on the queen side. Bishop to c8. The bishop has no real prospects on that diagonal anymore, so that will be rerouted. And knight to f3, developing. Knight comes to e4, probably thinking that it's a good central outpost and it's attacking the bishop. The bishop can come to f6, but here comes Topolov's excellent preparation. He was still in his opening preparation stage, and he decides to sacrifice the exchange for the knight. So rook into e4 out of the blue. What it does is it smashes the very solid central pawn structure for black. We can see right now that the d5 and the c6 pawns are quite solid. But after d into e4, we can see that the e4 pawn is now a little loose, and the c6 pawn is a backward pawn right on the diagonal of the light square bishop on g2. So it gives some chances. It's not very clear, but it gives some chances to white. Knight into e5, a very natural move, attacking the c6 as well as e4, very logical. And queen d5 was a good defense by Aronian, just holding down both pawns and centralizing his queen. And queen e1, continuing, putting some pressure on black's position. Bishop f5, defending the e4 pawn. We don't want to lose that if you can avoid it. And g4 now. The knight defends the pawn, pushing the bishop back to g6, and only now f3. And Aronian was still, Topalov was still in his preparation at this stage. Black doesn't really want to capture that pawn. That will only unleash the bishop. F into e3, bishop into, e into f3, bishop into f3. The c6 pawn will fall. White will get two connected passed pawns. And over here, the best idea would be to play bishop into c5, give up some material. White has already sacrificed a rook, So it would be okay for black to give up a minor piece for a couple of pawns, because after d into c5 and queen into c5, we see that white's king is a bit loose. So king h1 and now b4 will push the bishop back to b2 and the queen can infiltrate. This would broadly be okay. There would be some counterplay for black because of the loose king position for white. However, after f3, Aronian went for b4 immediately. And this is a bit different because this first allows f into e4 and it pushes the queen back. There is the pawn can't be captured. There's a very strong central pawn structure for white now. The queen goes to e6 and now the bishop can retreat. And here we see the difference that the queen has not infiltrated in white's camp, and the solid central pawn structure gives a little security to the white king. The king is not as loose as it was in the other variation. Bishop f6, putting some tension on the knight, and an excellent move by Topalov. He went for knight into c6, and it's not a piece sacrifice at all, because after queen into c6, we have e5, attacking the queen as well as the bishop. So white has grabbed another pawn, essentially. Queen to a6 and e into f6. Rook f to e8, intending to create some counterplay down the e file and hopefully infiltrate on the second rank. And that's why the move by Topalov is quite subtle but very powerful. He played queen f1, just shifting sideways, offering a queen trade and not allowing an infiltration on the second rank. Queen f2 would have been met with rook e2. Queen e2, interesting idea by Aronian. Let's infiltrate with the queen and offer a queen trade on our own terms. That's the thought behind this move. It attacks the bishop, it offers the queen trade, but queen f2 now. So this is a case of triangulation, that we don't directly go to f2. We first go to f1 and then nudge to f2. What it does is, it again allows for a queen trade on white's terms this time. That if the queens are swapped, then the king becomes a little more active on f2 and it prevents the rook from entering onto the second rank. Aronian takes the pawn, avoids a queen trade, and simply h3, pushing the queen back. Queen to g5, and bishop to c1, hitting the queen again. And the bishop will be rerouted to a better diagonal now. It was blocked in by its own pawns. Queen h5, it's still looking at the e2 square, but bishop f4 first, hitting the rook. Rook b to d8, putting some pressure on the central d4 pawn, so if the white queen should move, then the pawn will fall. But the pawns start marching now. c6, simply. You have a passed pawn, you have bishop support, why not push? Bishop to e4, hoping to swap one of the bishops and nullify the power of the bishop pair. But Topalov is not interested. He goes for c7 immediately, and black has to react. Rook c8. Rook to e1. Bishop into g2 is no longer possible. You can't swap a pair of bishops, because first you will swap a pair of rooks, rook into e8, and after rook into e8 you have queen into g2, and you're threatening all sorts of nasty back rank attacks. Queen into queen e4, queen c6, a lot of things are possible. So maybe queen d1 check can be thrown in, but the king simply hides on h2. g6, avoiding checkmate on g7, and now queen e4. It's quite powerful. The queen will infiltrate and the c7 pawn is very strong. So after rook e1, Aronian decided to defend the bishop with queen g6. And it's so poetic in this position that not only did we have one rook exchange, a rook sacrifice for a knight, now we have a rook sacrifice on the bishop, and both sacrifices are on the e4 square. So we have rook into e4. It's just amazing that two bishops and two pawns can really dominate a pair of rooks. So rook into e4, and white is in no mood to give up his bishop pair. d5. The other pawn marches, and d6 and d7 are coming very soon, so it's uh, very imperative for black to do something, but there's not much to be done. So rook c8 was tried, trying to give some checks on the e file, down the e file, but d6 anyway. Rook e1 and king h2. There's not much white needs to worry about. Queen to f5, controlling the d7 square, and queen g3, threatening checkmate on g7. So g6 is forced, and now queen g5. Once the queens are swapped, d7 will come, and there is no way to stop both pawns, essentially. Aronian obliged, and after the swap of queens, we have rook to d1, stopping d7, but then bishop c6 covers d7. Rook e2 one check was given, but after king g3, black resigned. And I really admire Topolov's ingenuity in this game, and it's so poetic that we saw two rook exchange sacrifices and both on the e4 square. So I found that quite amusing as well. Well, thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for the next game.